I'm Alan. I've been a Quaker in Swansea for about 8 years, and before that I attended a meeting in Milton Keynes for over 25 years. In fact, I first came to a Quaker meeting I think more than 35 years ago. And the reason I stayed was because so many ordinary members of that particular Quaker meeting so clearly tried to live what they believed. As I stayed, I learnt more about Quakers. The fact that there's no insistence on a particular belief or creed, which is just as well for me because there's so much where I just don't know what to believe. I learnt that there is a welcome for anybody, especially those who are seeking, questioning, and who are prepared to share their beliefs with others. I learnt that there's a wealth of ideas and wisdom, not rules, things really to question yourself with. For example, those which are in this little booklet of advices and queries. And I learnt about the central Quaker notion of that of God in everyone, which is something that when you start taking it seriously, it just can't be something which you leave behind you after you leave a meeting on a Sunday morning, which I'm sure that's why those Quakers, and indeed other Quakers I've met since, were so impressive in the way that everybody tries in some way to live out their faith. You might expect me to be going to say, well, I became a Quaker, then I learnt more about Quaker beliefs and principles, and then I tried to live out these principles. But for me at least, it wasn't like that at all. It was more that I've always felt some absolute need to try to care for others, to give everybody respect in an equal way. But I wouldn't say I'm very good at it, but I've always felt that one should be like that. No, it's more that I became a Quaker so that I could be part of a group that takes these things seriously. I've never been involved in any major Quaker initiatives, but over the years, again, I've learnt more about some of those. Quakers are well known for their work on peace, but I don't think it's a question of whether or not one is a pacifist. It's a question of the fact that Quakers will work for peace. And there are so many examples, again, I haven't been personally involved, but examples of peace-building work. I knew somebody who worked in the Oxford Research Unit when, in the days of the Cold War, they used to make a real effort to get people together, officials from the Russians and the American and the British side, whether it was by correspondence or through actual meetings. The Ecumenical Accompaniers Project, again, we have people in South Wales at the moment who've been involved. It's Ecumenical Accompaniers in Palestine and Israel. And the idea is that they are witnessing at first hand a situation of conflict which requires bringing people together. And it's this bringing people together rather than simply saying, I am a pacifist, which so impressed me it made me want to stay. But I also met somebody who told me they couldn't be a Quaker. And this was somebody I met in Uganda, a very, very impressive man from a Quaker background, who worked there for a project called the Ugandan Change Agents Association. This man said, no, I can't be a Quaker. And the reason was because of the fact that at the time there was a movement called the Lord's Resistance Army, an insurgent movement, civil conflict, and the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army was well known for the fact that his forces kidnapped children, maybe killed their parents, kidnapped the children, forced them to kill other people's parents or to witness atrocities so that they were so traumatized, completely afraid to go home. And this very, very impressive man from a Quaker background said, no, I can't be a Quaker because I don't see that of God in this man, the leader of this Lord's Resistance Army. And it troubled me for a long time. In fact, it wasn't the only reason, but I was an attender rather than becoming a member for a very long time. In the end, my answer may seem a bit trite, but my answer is that to me, faith isn't a question of, it's not a question of faith in that there is that of God in everyone, trying to see something special in everyone. I mentioned we don't have a creed, and I mentioned the advices and queries, and we're supposed to consider them carefully, give our own honest response to them. And the full quotation about that of God in everyone is in here. Be patterns, be examples in all countries, places, islands, nations, wherever you come, that your carriage and life may preach among all sorts of people and to them. Then you will come to walk cheerfully over the world, answering that of God in everyone. So to me, that is where faith lies, in trying to answer what is good and true in another person, and hoping that if you do that, that what is good and true will come out. It doesn't always work. It obviously hasn't worked with the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army, or maybe he's never met a Quaker. But this is how I believe I should live. And my faith is that that's a worthwhile way to live.